Hello, welcome to this video showing you the entire AutoBounce interface. We aim to keep AutoBounce very simple and intuitive and familiar for Logic users. AutoBounce is comprised of two windows, this main window you see here and then the naming convention editor, which can be accessed by clicking on this edit button, which we will go into detail a little bit later. Starting from the top, we have here the project name. This is simply the name of the currently scanned Logic Pro project in AutoBounce. Underneath that is the Bounce folder. This is the location where AutoBounce will export all mixes and stem folders. And inside those stem folders, the stems themselves. This always defaults to the Bounce folder of the current Logic project, but you can change it by clicking this button. Underneath it is the Bounce and Status button. This will start bouncing all the jobs in the job list. It will also tell you if AutoBounce is working and will allow you to cancel the jobs. Next to it is the Naming Convention Edit button. This opens the Naming Convention Editor where you can specify how you want your stems and mixes to be named for the currently selected job. Underneath it is the Naming Convention Preview window. This shows you a preview of how the first stem or the current mix will be named. Underneath that is the Rescan Cycle Range button. You can click to update the start and end points of the selected job to match the current cycle range in Logic Pro. And right next to this is the start and end display, which shows the start and end points of the current job. Over here we have these two radio buttons which tell AutoBounce how to handle duplicate file names when bouncing. So in Keep Both mode, this is the safest mode and ensures that AutoBounce will never overwrite any audio files whatsoever. If an audio file exists with the same name as the intended export, a number will be appended to the end of the name. So in Replace mode, this will allow AutoBounce to overwrite any files with the same name as the intended export. And this is best to use when you are certain that you want to replace a previously exported file with a new one using the same name or names. Over here to the right is the Master Output Level Enable button, and this enables AutoBounce to set the level of the master output fader. And next to that is the Master Output Volume setting. And this is where you would set your dB level for the master out fader at a value between 0 and -6 dB for the current job. Now over here with this plus sign we have the Create New Job button. And this button simply creates a new empty job and will set the start and end point to the current cycle range in Logic. All right, so not only does it create a new job, but it will rescan Logic for the current cycle range. Next to it is the Copy Selected Job button. This button copies the currently selected job, including the cycle range and all of the settings. Now, this mode is a little bit faster in the sense that it will not do that extra scan of the current cycle range in Logic. It will just copy the current one that you have selected. Next to that is the Delete Selected Job button, which does exactly that. One thing to note, however, is that it will not delete the last job on the list. So it will only work if you have more than one job there, and it will delete, again, the selected job. Here we have the Allow Aux Muting button. So this mode will display all of the aux channels and allow the user to uncheck or mute any aux channels they don't want to hear in their current job. So this, for example, is how you could create a set of dry stems or a dry mix by muting any reverbs or echoes being used as effect sends. Next to that is the Allow Master Output Effects Bypass button. This allows the user to bypass or turn off any effects inserts on the master out fader. So this, for example, is how you can export an unmastered mix or set of stems simply by unchecking or turning off any mastering plugins. This is often used in conjunction with lowering the master output fader volume to avoid overloading. If, for example, a limiter that was being used on the master output fader is now being bypassed. Next, we have the Select and Deselect All button. This will simply toggle between selecting and deselecting all visible tracks and track stacks in the list. Over here are the bounce type buttons. This is the stem mode button. In stem mode, every visible item, track or track stack that is checked will be exported as an individual stem. In mix mode, every visible item, track, or track stack that is selected will be mixed down into a single mix. So for example, in mix mode, if I wanted to run a full mix, I would simply select all. If I wanted to run a mix without the choir, I would select all and then uncheck the choir. Over here we have our two visibility buttons. The first one is the Show Hide Track Set to Off button. And this visibility toggle button allows the user to show or hide tracks that were set to off in Logic Pro. This makes it easy to remove visual clutter in auto bounce and eliminates the possibility of accidentally bouncing tracks that you don't want to include. Please note though, auto bounce will bounce any tracks that are set to off if they are selected and checked, and will return them to off once the bouncing is complete. But generally speaking, to avoid accidentally bouncing tracks that are turned off, you want to keep this button turned off and gray. Gray means the tracks are set to off in Logic when auto bounce scans the project, and they are invisible here. And blue means that any tracks that were set to off in Logic when auto bounce scanned them are now currently visible, indicated by this little power button icon. Next to it is the Show Hide Hidden Tracks button. This visibility toggle button allows the user to show or hide tracks that are set to hidden in Logic Pro. Once again, this makes it easy to remove visual clutter. As in Logic Pro, a gray icon means there are no hidden tracks. Green means hidden tracks are visible, and orange means that hidden tracks are not visible but present. Please note, if anything is not visible in auto bounce, it cannot be bounced. If you want to bounce any hidden tracks or tracks set to off, they must be made visible and selected. But generally speaking, users will not want to include tracks that are hidden or set to off in their bounces. Moving on to this area on the bottom left, this is the job list, and it lists all the jobs in the current auto bounce session. A job is defined as a set of stems or a single mix, and the type of job is chosen by the radio buttons here for either stems mode or mix mode. The job type indicators here show whether the current job is set to stem mode or mix mode, and makes it easy to visually determine what a job's type is even when it's not selected. Right next to it is the status indicator. When auto bounce is running, this area will display a green check mark once that job has been completed. The largest area of the auto bounce interface is the track list area. This area displays all tracks, track stacks, and nested track stacks. It can also display all aux channels and master out effect inserts when those two options are turned on. The presence of a drop-down arrow on the left along with a folder icon next to the track name indicates that it's a track stack, either a folder stack or summing stack. Logic also allows for nested stacks, and auto bounce makes it easy to tell the difference between a track stack and a regular track. This panel on the side is the bounce parameter area. It allows you to customize the Logic Pro bounce parameters for the current job. When auto bounce scans your Logic project, it will also scan your current bounce settings and mirror them in auto bounce. One of the great things about auto bounce is that it allows you to change these settings on a per job basis. Now let's take a look at the naming convention editor window. This field here is called the Output File Name Format field, and it's the area where you can type in a naming block and or drag in any of the dynamic naming blocks. Naming blocks are used to define the naming convention of the chosen job. This is especially useful in stem mode. This block without brackets is a custom naming block that you can create yourself by typing directly in the Output File Name Format field. Once you finish typing the custom name you want, simply press return and a new block is created. Dynamic naming blocks are used to create naming blocks that are automatically updated based on factors like track name, track numbers, SMPTE time, date, etc. They can be dragged into the output file name format field or copied and pasted into the naming convention editor window of another job. Note that you can tell the difference between a dynamic naming block and a custom one that you created, whose name stays the same, by the brackets around the dynamic naming blocks. Dynamic naming blocks are a massive time-saving tool, as it frees you from having to manually update the name of every file you export. For example, besides automatically filling in your track names, film composers will love that AutoBounce can automatically add the starting SMPTE time of the area you are bouncing. And game composers will love that AutoBounce can automatically add the current area's time signature and BPM to all your mixes and stems. At the very bottom is the separators type area. This allows you to choose what kind of separators you want in between the naming blocks, whether it be underscores, dashes, spaces, or nothing at all. And lastly, this globe icon will take you to our website, and the question mark will take you to our knowledge base.